Hi everybody, I'm Tina.
And I'm Priscilla.
And we are the Sensei Sisters. We are talking about toxic positivity this week. Last week we mentioned in our post that we were going to talk about that today.
Yes.
And we've been talking about it all morning.
Yep.
And we have some thoughts to share with you. Now, just a disclaimer, I never heard of toxic positivity until a little over a week ago. And I was talking about a situation in my life, and a friend of mine said, you know what that's called, toxic positivity. And I said, oh my gosh, that is a perfect term. So I looked it up, found the article that we posted, and then Priscilla and I got to talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an article, it's
Hey, Kathy.
called Toxic Positivity is Real and It is a Big Problem During the Pandemic, and it was written by a lady named Simone M. Scully. Back in July, actually, is when that came out. And I think I had actually seen the article once before, but we never talked about it on Sensei Sisters or anything. So Tina and I thought it would be a good time to bring it up.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I thought of when we were talking earlier about it, there's a song that I really like that comes on Life Songs, the Christian radio channel that's local here, by Matthew West. It's called Truth Be Told. And the reason that song makes me think of toxic positivity is the opening lines of the song. The first line is, lie number one, you're supposed to have it all together. And when they ask how you're doing, just smile and tell them never better. And the second line is, lie number two, everybody's life is perfect except yours. So keep your messes and your wounds and your secrets safe with you behind closed doors. And the title is Truth Be Told.
Yeah.
And so,
it makes a lot of sense. I was telling Priscilla that for me, it's like there's two sides of it, right? So there's toxic positivity in that everybody's encouraging you to be positive when you're going through a difficult time. And have faith, and it just drives. I know when my son died, it drove me crazy when I would post something very simple that wasn't really whining or anything like that, and people would respond back and say, have faith, Tina. And I would grumble to myself and say, I wonder if they would have faith if their kid died, and I would get really aggravated about it. But I know people meant well. They were just trying to say something to encourage me. But the thing about it is, Priscilla and I were talking about this at length. Faith is not the absence of fear any more than it's the absence of grief or sadness. And courage is not the absence of fear. In either case, you're working through whatever you're going through. You're still afraid, you're still grieving, but you're just pushing through and doing what you have to do. And so to say, have faith to somebody who's in the middle of some intense grief is just not very encouraging. And so don't do that. We know you mean well, but don't do that.
Most people don't understand that. They want to say something.
Yeah.
People think that not saying anything is bad, that they need to say something. But if you're not sure what to say, it's best just to say that. I don't know what to say. It's better to put it that way. And I got to enjoy the training when Ken and I were on our vicarage in New York. Upstate New York, not New York. I almost didn't say it right. New York. Anyway, I digress.
I almost started singing.
So,
New York.
We have ADD. Anyway, so when we were up there, we did Stephen's ministry training. I don't know if anybody's even I haven't heard anything about it in years. Yeah. But yeah, we did like 50 hours of training as Stephen's ministers, and what it is basically it's like peer counseling, to put it as briefly as I can. But we addressed toxic positivity without actually calling it that, and saying, there's the way that you're supposed to it was all about communication and how to be a good listener and how not to just try and stifle somebody's problem by putting a happy hat on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I just came up with that happy hat.
I like that. Happy hat. Don't put a happy hat on it. Oh, well, what I was thinking though was like, when we were grieving, the comments that brought me the most comfort were the ones where people said, I can't even imagine, I don't know what to say, or I'm so sorry, I'm praying for you. Not hang in there, or be positive, or have faith, be thankful for the memories. All of those things are good, but they're not what you need to hear when you're in the middle of tragic grief and you've been through it. So you know some of the things people said to you when you lost a child. So it's just, it's difficult. And, but the other side of it that I said it was twofold for me. The other side of it is this paradigm where everybody in a group is trying to be positive and supportive of one another, but nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, right? So you just keep ignoring it. Everybody is frustrated about a change in plans or whatever. Lack of communication, whatever, and everybody's trying to say, we're doing great, we're so happy, and nobody wants to talk about the problems. And Priscilla was saying this morning, healthy conflict is a good thing. We talked about that a few weeks ago, I think, on Sensei Sisters. But for me, that drives me crazy. It reminds me, there's this old training video that we watched when I was in the corporate world called The Road to Abilene. And it's about paradigms. And so a paradigm is when people are just stuck in the way of doing something because it's been done that way for so long, and nobody wants to change it. And one of my jobs as when I was working in process management was that we would look at a process that people were doing, and we would take it apart and we would map it out. And every step of the way, if we were looking at an accounts payable procedure, we would say to the person that did it, well, why do you do that? Well, why do you do that? Well, why do you do that? We keep asking why, so that if they would say, well, that's because it's always been done like that. Well, no, there's got to be a better reason than that. Why do you do it that way? Because what happened is when technology came into play and all these companies had technology at their fingertips. That's not what I was, fingertips. That's what I was trying to say. They had technology at their fingertips, but they were still doing things the old way because they were stuck in a paradigm, right? And The Road to Abilene is just this movie about how this whole family always went to Abilene on a certain day of the summer and made a road trip of it. And the air conditioner was broken in the car, and they still went to Abilene in the hot car. It always picture Carol Burnett when I'm thinking of the story, but that's not who was in the movie. But it was unknown people. But Carol Burnett must have reminded me of the one character. But so they drove to Abilene in the heat of July in this hot car because that's what they always did. And none of them wanted to go. None of them wanted to be in the car for that long trip. But because they had always done it that way, no one wanted to buck the system. And so that's my thought on the other side of toxic positivity, is that people get together and they want to get along, so they are so afraid to say anything. And isn't it true that, especially with social media, if you say anything slightly negative, even if it makes 100% sense and it's very logical and you're saying it in as nice a way as possible, people still have something to say about it because they don't want you to buck the system. And we've got to get out of that habit of not rocking the boat. The boat needs to be rocked, people.
Exactly.
Preach.
We could really go off on a tangent.
Oh,
on
Lord.
that.
Now, Priscilla brought up toxic negativity. So share your thoughts on that.
I was just saying, it as true as it is that there is toxic positivity, and we don't want people to, as people, we don't want to smother somebody's situation in a bunch of hats or positive, thoughts and say, don't feel bad, don't be mad, don't be sad. People need to be sad. People need to experience life and experience their feelings. But you don't have to dwell in it. When I used to sell Mary Kay a long time ago, a million years ago. It's like, oh gosh, it was like 20 years ago. It was 20 time ago. It was 20 years ago. Holy smokes. Yeah.
You old.
was like, how almost half my life ago. Anyway, so when I was in Mary Kay, my director, we'd have these awesome meetings to build us up and get us excited, and we lived in this pink bubble of joy where nothing could go wrong. And we would, if we were ever disappointed about how our sales were going and our productivity and whatever, she would say it's okay to be upset, but you can't live in your frustration. You have to get up and get back on the horse and move on. And I was very quick to take up that position and back her up on that. And I said, it's okay to sit on your pity potty, but you have to flush and get up.
You know why? Because you're into that potty talk.
Yeah, I have a lot of potty talk.
You really
true.
are.
I do enjoy.
You read too many Captain Underpants books when you were a kid.
That didn't exist when I was a kid.
Well, maybe you read them to one of your kids. Oh wait, that was me. I read them to mine.
No, I don't, actually I didn't read a lot of those, but I do enjoy. I have mentioned I enjoy watching Teen Titans Go, which is a lot of toilet humor. Incredible. Don't get me started.
You have a 10-year-old boy. That's
I do.
what they do.
There's a lot of farting and
Potty humor.
pooping, butts, all of that. Anyways,
Yeah.
but but the idea I had in my mind back then, it still applies. I mean, at the time I was probably projecting some toxic positivity on my team, and I regret that now because and actually that was post being trained as a Stevens minister, so I should have probably known better. But I was in my pink bubble, and so I was screened from knowing what I was doing. I was out of my mind. Anyway, I was all hopped up on cosmetics. But the point is that it's still the same. Yes, feel your feelings by all means. Grief is different for every person.
Yeah.
It is a personal experience. You cannot, when you say to somebody, I don't know how you're feeling, then that's accurate. If you tell somebody, I know exactly how you feel, it is probably not accurate.
Yeah.
You can say, I have experienced something similar, and I know what that was like for me. That's a better way to word it. I'm giving you a little extra training right now.
Yeah.
But, we don't know. Everybody's experience is different. I had a lot of people approach me after we lost Amelie. She was stillborn. For those of you who don't know, it was 7 years ago. We lost a child. I had my own personal way of grieving through that. It was probably extremely different than it is for a lot of people.
I know it was. I remember
Very, very different for me, than if I had lost one of my existing children or something like that. It's very specific to me. And I had so many people who had lost babies write me notes and call me and tell me, that they knew exactly how I felt and started listing all that they went through, and it was nothing anywhere like what my experience was. My behavior was not what their behavior was, and they were so convinced that they were helping me, and I was like, oh God, not another one. I got tired of hearing about other people's experiences because I was at a point I didn't want it, and I didn't need it.
You didn't want to dwell.
You
didn't want to dwell.
Yeah, and I didn't feel the feelings they felt. So be careful before you go assuming that other people feel the way you do when they lose their job, when they lose a spouse, when they get cancer, whatever it is. Don't and I know people want to help people and say, oh, you have cancer, I have just the vitamins for you, or right?
Yeah.
Or oh, you're struggling with this is going to help you. Don't assume. At the same time, I do struggle with that because there's times people tell me about a problem they have, and I know something that's worked for me, and I'm like, then I'm panicked because I don't want to assume that I know what they're going through, and I don't want to assume that I have the answer. But at the same time, I'm afraid to hold it in
Yeah.
because you don't want to withhold something that could be helpful to somebody. So you just have to be careful how you pose these things.
Oh yeah, it's all about communicating it the right way.
Yeah,
you know?
I think I got off track on the
Toxic
toxic
negativity.
negativity. I went off on another train.
Well,
I'm
my
sorry.
thought about the toxic negativity, and I gave a speech in Toastmasters, and this was even before I lost my son. I talked about a difficult period in our lives, in my husband and my life, and it was when PJ, my son, who passed away years prior, had been in a car accident and burned from head to toe, and at that same time, that same year, we lost our house in a hurricane and lost absolutely everything. And then shortly after that, my mother-in-law died, and it was just one thing after another. So there was like a 3-year period where we had all these horrible things happening to us, and I called it my season of sorrows. And just looked for, I remember saying to somebody, I think this is supposed to last 7 years, and then we get 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of famine and 7 years of prosperity. But I was like, please, Lord, I can't handle 7 years. 3 years is enough. But people used to ask me, how did you get through that difficult time? And so I gave a speech one time in Toastmasters where I talked about how, there are ways to maintain your faith. And one of them is that while it's okay to grieve and it's okay to be sad, you can't dwell in that misery, because what happens is that's all your focus is, right? You can't keep your focus on God if you're focused on grief. You can't keep your focus on your children that are still alive if you're focused on the one you lost, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't let it absorb you and consume you. Mm-hmm. And that's where the toxic negativity comes in. In the speech, I said, it's like the man that goes to the doctor and says, doctor, it hurts when I do this. And he says, well, then don't do that, because that's what dwelling in misery is. It's painful to sit there and look at photographs of the child you lost, but then you sit there doing it anyway and crying your eyes out.
Shaking your own box.
Yes. We'll have to post the article about the box, the grief box.
Yeah, there was an article that came, and I think we actually talked about this last year.
Yeah, I think
when
we
we
did.
were first starting Sensei Sisters, we talked about grief is a ball in a box. And when you are in grief, when you're grieving, and the grieving process can last forever, it's just, it's not even really a process, it's a state.
Yeah.
And you have this ball in your box, in your grief box, and things, and you never know what's going to jostle that ball and make it rattle around. And sometimes something very insignificant can happen and tip your box, and that ball gets rattled around and sets off these feelings. And that sometimes we shake our own box. There's this commercial, and it's a Wi-Fi commercial, so it has nothing to do with emotions, but in the commercial, the young lady, looks like she's about 14 or 15 years old. Her boyfriend broke up with her and she's upset, and the mom turns the Wi-Fi off, and she gets mad and opens the door, and the mom's got pie, and she's coming to sit with her, which is wonderful. Good mother, go sit with her. But she shuts the
pie
Wi-Fi.
part's the
girl
best.
is watching. She's going through her Facebook and looking at old posts with her boyfriend. She's listening to sad music on iTunes or whatever, and that's why the mom shuts it down, because she's shaking her own box to pieces.
Yeah.
And I remember being a teenager, and when
shaking your own
we
box.
shook it.
Yeah,
I
we
still
did.
shake it, but it's something else.
A lot of people shake their own box,
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and you can really...
Your box gets shaken enough by other people. Don't
Yeah,
shake
in
your
the
own
world.
freaking box.
Yeah, that's why now you have to have trigger warnings when you on Facebook and TikTok whenever you talk about anything that might upset somebody else.
Yeah.
For God's sakes, because we can't police our own emotions. I understand people have PTSD, but we gotta. There's got to be a point at which you can take care of yourself and not rely on everybody else. If you're gonna be on TikTok, yes, if you have flashing lights, you do have to warn people who have epilepsy. But if it's about feelings, and good on you if you say trigger warning and you say this is gonna have this in it. or maybe the visual is going to be something that might be upsetting if it's an injured animal or whatever.
I'm just impressed with all
But-
your TikTok talk here. I clearly am not as versed in TikTok as
You're
you
on it
are.
way more than
I need to work on that.
But you know, but there is a point at which it's like you do need to kind of be aware of yourself and know what's going to set you off and avoid those things.
Yeah.
And don't shake your own box.
yeah.
And so yeah, there's
And
enough
some things
stuff
are going to
out
be
there.
givens, right? So like, and sometimes you may, this is weird too. Like, I remember, last year, no, 2019, in July, I started just having like, I had been through counseling for grief and had done well with it, came out of it, was doing fabulous. And all of a sudden, like in July, I was super, super busy, and I had all these, what do you call them? Balls in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like all the balls just dropped because I was hit with this overwhelming grief and didn't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And then it hit me that PJ's birthday was like 2 weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that in my mind, in the back of my mind, I knew PJ's birthday was coming up, and I was so freaked out about that. And when the birthday came and went, it was not a big deal. Okay. So one of the things, here's a teaching tool, right? One of the things that AJ and I decided to do was on PJ's birthday, we would invest money that we would have normally given him for a gift in helping somebody else, right? And it was a really kind of neat idea that we came up with. And what I did that next year was I wrote an article about drug addiction from my blog, and I thought it was a very poignant article about, and you can go look for it if you want. I'll post a link to it in the comments. But it was
We
it
got
was
a lot of links to remember today.
Oh, I know, right? But it was an article about what families of drug addicts want you to know, right? And I decided to boost that post because it was getting such a good response. I was getting messages from people that followed my page and all. And so I said, wow, this is really getting a good response. I might boost it. Well, PJ's birthday was like the next week. So I talked to AJ, and he said, boost it as much as you want. We probably would have put up, if he were still alive, we would have been spending $100, $200 on him for his birthday. Whatever you want to take of that money and put it toward boosting that post. And I was so overwhelmed with the people that wrote to me about that and shared how helpful it was for them. And even if it didn't get the point across to people who condemn drug addicts and think drug addiction is like drug addicts are the scum of the earth or whatever, my point was, if you're a family member of somebody that struggles with drug addiction, you know how it can affect them. And so I felt like even if I didn't help somebody else understand, I validated the feelings of the families. And so I turned that negative possibility for negative
Toxic negative.
toxic negativity or negative toxicity. I'm flipping it in my head. Anyway, I
sounds
turned
like
it
chemistry.
around and I said, this could be a negatively toxic day for me, but I'm going to turn it into something positive. There you go. I said it, and it only took me like 10 times the amount of words it should have. But turn that frown upside down. No. And you do have to grieve, and days are going to be hard, but don't, I had a friend that, bless her heart, she lost her husband, and I felt so bad for her because I can't even imagine. He was young, and she used to like look at the calendar and say, it'll be, a month on Tuesday, and then it'll be 2 months on Wednesday or whatever. And I said to her, you've got to stop focusing on those dates because it's going to bring you down. It really is. And you have to, think about the days that are special, your wedding anniversary. And although there's sadness there's also joy because you spent X amount of wonderful years together. And I probably was trying to be toxic positive with her, but I just saw her going into a deep depression over these specific milestones, and I was trying to be helpful. So see, even when you're trying to be helpful, sometimes you're toxically positive. So be careful.
Yeah.
I feel like I beat that one to death. Hopefully you got something out of this.
I think it was all good.
It was
I
all
enjoyed
good.
it.
It was all positive, but not toxically so.
Right. Yep.
So give us your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you think about our ramblings. We love you guys. Like and share our posts. But the most important thing you can do right now is make yourself a priority.
Yep. Take care of you.
Bye.
Bye.